Let's see. So the first thing that we're going to do, let me talk about gradients and gradient meshes, because this is the first thing we're going to create. Isn't that beautiful, all the colors? I talked about gradients, and when you create them, there's really two kinds of gradients that you can work with. What are they? Do you remember the names? Radial and linear. Radial and linear. And the reason why there's only two of them, they're two of the most common ones, because these are the easiest to be able to control and to set up. A linear just goes from one side to the other. Regardless, you can change, of course, you can change up the direction of it using your mesh tool. Radial goes from a central point outward, and of course you can use your tool to be able to change up the shape and location of that one. And this is regardless what shape that you're using. If I applied a linear gradient to a little more organic kind of shape, it would look like this. If I did change that to a radial, it would look like this. It would just be kind of masked inside of it. But gradient meshes are a third kind of gradient you can work with, and this is a little bit more dynamic. It gives you the ability to blend colors from one region of an object to another region of an object. And if I scroll over it, you can see my vector lines are lighting up. And this is the mesh, the little, think of it as a mesh net, the little lines that go, latitude and longitude across the object that you create. When you create these, however, you have to pay attention a lot to the details of how this is set up. I don't use these very often, but you can get some really, really good, I guess, more realistic results. If you look at vector artwork, one common complaint is that it looks very hard-edged. It looks like it's an illustration. It doesn't look quite real. If you go and do a Google search, I did one for gradient mesh illustrations, you can actually find some very real-looking kinds of illustrations, and they're all vector styles. This one is blending it together. This is an entire mesh, and they're laying in the colors, the skin tones for these kinds of things. Let me see if I can find one that gives, yeah, here's a whole one. So that person right there, that is a vector illustration that was created. This is the vector mesh that had to be created in order to get all the colors to blend in a more natural style. Here's one, of course, of all the different kinds of fruit that you can create from it. We're going to keep ours simple. Hey, here's one for an entire camera. Wow. All the little lines had to be drawn or had to be set up to do this. We're just going to keep ours simple. We're just going to do ours as a single lemon. But you can be very, very complex with these kinds of things as well. Okay, jumping back into here. Here's how to create a gradient mesh and some things to think about when you do create one. I'm going to redraw. Actually, tell you what, I'll use this object. Let's set it to just a solid fill color. By default, your objects that you create are going to be a solid fill color, or it could be a regular gradient. To make a mesh inside of it, there's two different ways. The book is going to tell you, once you draw off your lemon, to go to Object, down to Create Gradient Mesh, and it's going to ask you the number of rows and columns you want to set up when creating this mesh. If you turn on Preview, you get an idea of what it will look like. Now notice what's happening when it creates these rows and columns. It's actually trying to follow the contour of the top and the bottom of it, and it's getting a good average between one side to the other side. Does that make sense? So that's why it's looking so warped this way. In this case, it's got 4 by 4. If I increase it, you can see I can add more rows or fewer rows, more columns or less columns to it. If you're working with this artistically, the more rows and columns you have, the more details that you can put into your illustration. But the fewer that you have, the easier it is to manipulate these. If you've got so many points and lines on here, it can be very, very daunting to keep up with everything. The other thing you can do is there's an appearance. You can keep it a flat color, or you can have it change from the center point outward to 2 different colors. I've always kept it flat so I can tell exactly what I'm getting into when I work with them. That's the way the book is going to ask you to set up your illustration, to use this gradient mesh creation. I'm going to show you another way of doing it. And there's a tool that lets you give exact points where you want to draw off your gradient mesh. The gradient mesh tool, if you look in your toolbox, is next to the gradient tool, and it looks like a little mesh in itself. If you select your object and you hover over it, you can click on the object and it will automatically create a row and column wherever you click at. And if you click on a line, it'll add a line to there. So with this tool, it allows you to give exact points exactly where you want to place a color, to place a specific swatch on there. If you're creating this kind of artwork and you need to control exactly where a shadow is or exactly where a detail on the eyes are, using the tool will give you a lot more control over where to place those colors. So I've talked about placing colors, and now let's actually place some colors and change it up. And we'll zoom in so we can see what we're working with. I do like to work with my swatches when I create these, so I'm going to drag my swatches out. Remember, you can customize your swatches, choose the exact colors that you want to work with. If I select it with my black arrow, my selection tool, that's going to give me all the points, not necessarily what I want. I'm going to use my direct selection tool to be able to click on individual points inside of my mesh. And you can see just those points are lit up. I can move it around. They do have Bezier handles, so I can control exactly where they're at. But with that one point selected, I can change the color of that one point, which will look like that. And you can see from that point outward, it's going to blend in with the rest of the red that's there. I can continue clicking on other points and changing up those colors as well. And so this is a quick and easy way, let's give it something we can see, to changing up your colors and to making your gradient mesh change to exactly what you want. Right now I'm kind of just working randomly. If I was to select not a point, but an actual area, let's say I clicked right inside of here. I've got these 4 points automatically selected, so this whole area I can turn into a solid color. That will be solid and it will blend in with the other areas that are around it. Does that make sense? So paying attention to the points that you select or the areas is kind of vital to working within this project. Also knowing what color to be able to select is very vital as well. So how does that apply to our project for today? This is what you're going to be creating. They're going to give you this lemon and you're going to vectorize it and create a gradient mesh, and it's going to look pretty close to a real lemon. It will still look like an illustration. Of course, you're not going to be able to get all the little pits and texture of the lemon, but you will be able to pick up some of the highlights and the shadows, the lighter and the darker areas of each of the shapes that you're working with. So I'm going to work this first part for you just to show you how quickly and easily it could be done. Notice how I've got my layers set up. This is another important one. Let's move our swatches out of the way. We don't even need our gradient. You don't even need your gradient palette to work on this. I got my lemon on its own template layer. I did adjust the dimness to 100%. That's going to come in handy when I pick my colors. And I'm going to be drawing on the layer that's above it. Always start off with a point. Remember, you can click. What button am I holding down to curve that? Option. Option lets me curve that out. I do want to see you use curves. Try not to make it all straight edges. Remember, you can click a little farther away and then curve it. If it's not curving the way you want, hold down Option and you get your Bezier handles and you can control exactly where you want those to go. There's a curve. There's a curve. We're going to let it curve in. You can always undo. Actually, that's a little bit more straight. Or you can click and drag and get your Bezier handle as well. So there's my lemon. It's nice and created. Shift X will swap between my fill and my stroke color. That's how I was able to quickly fill that in. That's what I'm looking for. You will need to do it as a yellow, so let's turn it yellow. And we'll need to create our gradient on top of it. I'm just going to create my own little gradient. We'll keep it maybe 5 by 5. I think the book will have something different for you. Everyone's will look a little bit different. Remember, if you want to add more rows and columns, you can use your gradient mesh tool and click within it, and that'll allow you to add more rows and exact points wherever you want it to go. Now, here's the fun part of coloring in this particular lemon. I need to be able to select exactly the color that is on the picture of our lemon. It's got some darker yellows, it's got some lighter yellows, and everything in between. To be able to pick up colors, there's a tool called your Eyedropper Tool. Looks like a little medical eyedropper. If you click and hold, it's also hiding under the measure tool if you don't see it. With this tool, watch my swatch, my fill color swatch change as I click on different areas. You can see it's picking up exactly wherever I click on, lighter area or a darker area. And those are the swatches that I want to be able to put into my gradient mesh. So one thing I could do is I could select my color, I can go over to my swatches and make a new color. Now I'm have to do this for every little point that's on there. That gets very, very tedious. The other thing I could do is I could use my anchor point, or excuse me, my direct selection tool, select an anchor point, and then choose my eyedropper tool, and then find that area on my lemon. And you can see it changed just a little bit on there. And then go back and forth, choose another point, move down, choose my eyedropper tool, select it, and then slowly build out the rest of my colors. Did I lose anybody on that? I'm about to show you the easy way, the way the book actually does it. The problem with that is I have to go back and forth, trying to find exactly those points. I want to undo this. Let's place this right back on top. I would love to be able to place it right there and to be able to see what's underneath my, my layer, to see my lemon template. If we work in outline mode, this will let me see both my mesh and my layer that's underneath that I'm working with. Pretty cool? Actually, if you hold down the Command key and click on the icon, you can turn that layer into preview or outline mode very quickly. So the Command key and clicking on that layer will let me see that. Here's another good little tip. I'm going to choose my eyedropper tool and my selection tool. If I hold down, well, where is it? Oh, back to my eyedropper tool. There we go. I've got my eyedropper tool. If I hold down my Command key, watch what it changes to. My direct selection tool. When I let go, it goes back to eyedropper. So now all I have to do is hit one key to be able to swap back and forth between those two tools. Here's what we're going to do. Hold down Command, click on an anchor point, so I've got it selected. When I let go of my Command key, I can now click on my lemon picture and change the color of it. Now I can't see it just yet, but I can continue on, hold down Command, click, let go, and select right near it. Command, click, next to it. Very quickly, I can pick up colors that are next to the anchor points, therefore close to the value that I want, and pick up the colors. Command, click, let go, and then pick up the color. Even when I get down here in the shadows, I can get those shadow edges. And I can do this for every point that's on here. Now I do need to pay attention to what row that I'm on. When we go back into outline mode, you'll see where I stopped and what it looks like. Let's see how it'll look. Let's do a few more. Command and click. I'll go away. I'm having fun. We'll stop right there. I'm going to turn back on preview mode. What do I hold down to? Command. Command and click on my eyeball. When I open it up, you can see there it is. Pretty cool? Command, click on my eyeball. I can go back in here. And all I'm doing is using my Command key to swap back and forth between these two tools. It's simply a matter of selecting the anchor point and then continuing to work from there. Once I'm finished, the entire lemon will look like it's shaded in appropriately and vectorized appropriately for the project that you're working on. This is what your final result should look like. When creating the lemon, I'm not looking for perfection. Remember, I'm looking for you to use the right tools and the right techniques. So don't try to spend hours on creating this. thinking that it has to look absolutely perfect. That's totally okay. Next class, we're going to talk about how you can take a font and then convert it and change it up to make it into more of a logo, how you can customize your own fonts and be able to move things around, and also working with your Pantones and using solid colors and creating custom artboards to save it up. Any questions? Okay, all right, I'm going to turn it back over to y'all and let y'all get started on this project. Remember, this class and next class is all I'm going to do to talk about this project. Next week will be a work day, so you can catch up on anything that you're missing.